You can learn a lot about a system when conditions are favorable. A dog can perform well in a training room. A team can function effectively when resources are plentiful. A leader can appear confident when every decision goes according to plan. But pressure has a way of exposing what preparation conceals. For Danny and Gunner, there came a point when training was no longer about repetition in familiar environments. The question was no longer whether they could perform during practice. The question was whether the partnership they had built could hold together when the environment became unpredictable. Because eventually every system is tested. And when that moment arrives, preparation either becomes performance or it becomes a memory of what should have been.
From First Paw Media, sponsored by Dream Chaser Leadership in Anchorage, Alaska. This is the Peak Experience Podcast. Here we talk about leadership, team building, strategic management, and organizational development. Visit our website, peakexp.org. Now, here are your hosts, Robert and Michelle Thorntoe.
Welcome back to The Journey, Leadership Through Partnership, the Danny and Gunner story. In our last episode, we talked about foundations. We explored how expectations, routines, and trust became the building blocks of Danny and Gunner's partnership. Those early months of training were not particularly dramatic, but they were essential. Every repetition, every routine, and every small success contributed to a system that was becoming more reliable over time. Eventually, however, every training program reaches a point where the focus shifts. The goal is no longer simply learning a skill. The goal becomes proving that the skill works outside the environment where it was learned. That was the stage Danny and Gunner were entering. The foundation had been built. The routines had become familiar. Trust was growing. The next question was whether that partnership could perform when the environment became unpredictable. Now, let's talk about the differences between training and real life. Because one of the biggest misconceptions people have about service dog training is that the training environment is the goal. It is only the beginning. The purpose of training is not to create a dog that performs well in a controlled setting. The purpose is to create a team that can function effectively in the real world. The real world is rarely controlled. People move unpredictably. Unexpected sounds occur. Crowds gather. Situations change without warning. A dog that performs perfectly in a quiet training facility may respond very differently when confronted with a constantly changing environment. For Danny and Gunner, this was where the work started to become more meaningful. Every outing introduced new variables. Every public setting created challenges that could not be replicated in a classroom or training center. The objective was no longer to demonstrate a behavior. The objective was to build confidence that the behavior would hold up across environments. That distinction matters because reliability is not measured by what happens under ideal conditions. Reliability is measured by how well it performs under conditions far from ideal. And here's where public access is really teaching you about confidence. People often think of public access training as primarily for the dog. They assume it is about teaching the dog how to behave appropriately in restaurants, stores, airports, and other public spaces. While that is certainly part of it, public access training is equally important for the handler. For Danny, entering public environments with Gunner was not simply a training exercise. It was an opportunity to rebuild confidence. Every successful outing became evidence that the partnership was working. Every situation that once felt intimidating became an opportunity to reinforce trust. Confidence rarely appears all at once. More often, it develops gradually through experience. A successful trip to a store leads to confidence in a larger environment. A successful day in a crowded location creates confidence for future situations. Over time, those experiences begin to accumulate. What emerges is not just a trained service dog team, but a person who begins to trust their ability to navigate situations that once felt overwhelming. That is one of the most powerful outcomes of the process. The goal is not simply public access. The goal is to help someone reclaim confidence in everyday life. But pressure reveals the truth. Pressure has a unique ability to reveal the strengths and weaknesses of a system. When conditions are favorable, weaknesses often remain hidden. People can compensate for them. Teams can work around them. Dogs can appear successful despite gaps in their training. Pressure changes that. The moment conditions become more challenging, weaknesses become visible. Communication problems become harder to ignore. Inconsistency becomes more apparent. Small issues that seemed manageable in controlled environments suddenly have consequences. The same thing happens in organizations. A company may appear healthy when business is strong and resources are abundant. A team may seem effective when everyone agrees and challenges are limited. But when pressure increases, whether through competition, uncertainty, or rapid change, the true strength of the system becomes visible. Pressure does not create most problems. It simply exposes them. This is one of the lessons reinforced repeatedly during Danny and Gunner's training. Every new environment provided feedback. Every challenge revealed opportunities for improvement. Every success demonstrated that the foundation they had built was becoming stronger. We're going to take a short break here, and we will be right back.
Leadership is not learned in comfort. It is forged through challenge, uncertainty, and action. It's time for another memorable moment in leadership history, sponsored by Dream Chaser Leadership and Peak Experience, providing experiential leadership development, strategic coaching, and team building programs designed for real-world results.
Moment in leadership history. Henry Ford builds systems. Henry Ford did not invent the car. He changed how cars were built. He scaled through systems, not a heroic effort. This week's lesson: systems outperform hustle. Today's mantra: build repeatable success. Okay, we're back. Leadership under stress. Over the years, this became one of the most important leadership lessons we carried into our work through Peak Experience. Many people believe leadership is most visible when things are going well. In reality, leadership is often most visible when things are not. Stress changes behavior. It narrows focus. It increases uncertainty, and it creates pressure to react quickly. Under those conditions, leaders often discover whether they have built a reliable system or whether they have been relying on favorable circumstances. The strongest leaders are not necessarily the ones who remain calm because they possess extraordinary confidence. More often, they remain calm because they trust the systems they have built. They trust the preparation that came before the challenge. Danny experienced a similar shift during his journey with Gunner. As the partnership grew stronger, he became less focused on controlling every situation and more focused on trusting the process they had developed together. That confidence did not come from certainty about the environment. It came from confidence in the partnership. The distinction is important. Very few of us can control the environment around us. What we can control is how well we prepare for it. When the foundation holds, one of the most rewarding moments in any developmental process occurs when preparation begins to translate into performance. The foundation that once felt invisible suddenly becomes visible through results. For Danny and Gunnar, there came a point where public access was no longer simply a training exercise. The routines became natural, communication became more intuitive, trust became stronger. Situations that once required significant effort became manageable because the partnership had matured. Those moments did not happen because of a single breakthrough. They happened because of the countless hours invested beforehand. The routines, repetitions, and expectations established during the early stages of training were now supporting performance in environments that once felt challenging. That is the value of a strong foundation. It enables individuals and teams to perform under difficult circumstances. In our final episode, we will step back and look at the bigger picture. We will explore what happened after the training, how Danny and Gunnar's partnership continued to evolve, and what this journey ultimately taught us about trust, independence, and long-term success. Because while training is important, it was never the goal. The goal was always to build a partnership that could change a life. So in closing, pressure changes everything. It changes how we think. It changes how we respond. It changes how we evaluate the systems we depend on. But pressure also provides clarity. It reveals whether our preparation is sufficient. It reveals whether trust has been earned. It reveals whether the foundations we have built can support us when conditions become difficult. For Danny and Gunnar, pressure became an opportunity to prove that their partnership was real. And that is the lesson of the heart of this story. Success is not determined by how well we perform when everything goes according to plan. Success is determined by how well we perform when it doesn't.
From First Paw Media, this is the Peak Experience Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this podcast, and we invite you to subscribe in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. You will find a link in our episode notes. You can tap or swipe on the episode cover art, and you'll see some offers from our sponsors. You can support our show by supporting them. If you like what you have heard, we would love it if you would give us a 5-star rating and tell your friends how to subscribe too. Our producer is Robert Forto and created by First Paw Media.